December 15th, 1982. Johnny Carson was mid-monologue when the red phone on his desk, the prop phone that had never worked, that was just part of the set, suddenly started ringing. Live, on air, in front of 25 million viewers. Johnny froze. Ed McMahon looked confused. The crew panicked, and when Johnny finally picked up the phone, the voice on the other end belonged to his 78-year-old mother calling from Nebraska. What she told him in the next 7 minutes wasn't funny. It wasn't planned. But it became the most honest moment in Tonight Show history. And when America found out why Dorothy Carson had called, they understood. Some things can't wait for tomorrow. It was a Tuesday night, and the Tonight Show was running like a Swiss watch. Johnny was in the middle of his opening monologue, making jokes about President Reagan's economic policies and holiday shopping chaos. The studio audience, 300 people, was laughing at all the right moments. 25 million Americans across the country were settling into their nightly ritual. Johnny Carson before bed. Everything was perfect, scripted, controlled. Then the phone rang. Not Johnny's personal phone, not a backstage phone. The red phone, the prop that sat on Johnny's desk as part of a running presidential hotline joke. The phone that had never actually worked. The shrill ring cut through Johnny's punchline like a knife. The audience went silent. Ed McMahon's face showed genuine confusion. Doc Severinsen and the band stopped mid-note. Johnny stared at the phone like it was a bomb. Fred DeCordova, the show's director, was frantically gesturing from behind the cameras. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't supposed to happen. But the phone kept ringing. Finally, Johnny made a decision that would create television history. He picked it up. "Hello?" Johnny said, his famous composure barely intact. "This is the Tonight Show." "Johnny," came a voice through the phone, clear enough that the studio audience could hear it. "Johnny, is that really you?" Johnny's face went through a series of emotions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, shock. The voice belonged to his mother, Dorothy Carson, 78 years old, calling from Norfolk, Nebraska. "Mom?" Johnny's voice cracked. "Mom, how did you even get through to this phone?" Dorothy's warm laugh crackled through the speakers. "Well, Johnny, I called NBC and told them it was an emergency. They put me through to some phone that would reach you directly. I didn't know it would be on live television until I heard the audience." The studio audience, realizing this wasn't a bit, wasn't scripted, began to murmur with excitement. This was Johnny Carson's actual mother, calling him, live, during his show. "Mom," Johnny said, running his hand through his hair in a gesture America had never seen. Johnny Carson, genuinely flustered. "You can't just call NBC and ask to be put through to the Tonight Show. That's not how it works." "Oh, honey," Dorothy replied with that particular brand of loving exasperation only mothers possess. "Don't you worry about how it works. I told them I was your mother and that I had something important to tell you that couldn't wait until tomorrow." Johnny looked at the audience, then at the cameras. He could have hung up, could have laughed it off, could have cut to commercial. Instead, he made a choice that revealed something about his character America had never seen. "Okay, Mom," Johnny said, settling back in his chair with a smile that wasn't his performer's smile. This one was real. "Since you've got 25 million people listening, what did you want to tell me?" Before we continue with what Dorothy said next, words that would change how America saw Johnny Carson forever. If you're here because you remember when television felt real, when moments like this could actually happen, subscribe to Johnny Carson Legacy Stories. We're uncovering the unscripted truths that made Johnny more than just a host. Hit that bell so you never miss these stories. What happened next wasn't comedy. It was something far more powerful. Dorothy Carson, completely unfazed by the fact that she was talking to her son in front of a national audience, began speaking with the directness only a parent can manage. "Well, Johnny, I wanted to tell you that your father and I watched the show last week where you talked about your childhood in Nebraska, and I want you to know how proud we are of you." The audience, still expecting a punchline, slowly realized this was something different. "Mom, you tell me that all the time," Johnny replied. But there was something in his voice, a softness America had never heard. "I know I do, sweetheart," Dorothy continued, "but I wanted to tell you on television because I wanted everyone to know what kind of son you are. Not Johnny Carson the entertainer, Johnny Carson the person. Johnny's composure started to crack. Mom, I don't think America needs to hear about my personal life. Well, I think they do, Dorothy said with that maternal firmness. Because you make people laugh every night, but you never tell them about all the good things you do when the cameras aren't rolling. What Dorothy said next shocked everyone, including Johnny. She started revealing things Johnny had kept private for years. His anonymous donations to children's hospitals, his quiet support of struggling comedians, his visits to veterans' facilities that he'd specifically requested stay out of the press. Last month, Dorothy continued, you flew to Nebraska just to surprise Mrs. Henderson next door after her husband passed. You spent 2 hours sitting in her kitchen drinking coffee, listening to her talk about Harold. She didn't even know you were famous. She just knew you were that nice boy from next door. Johnny's face reddened. Mom, people don't need to know about that. And when little Tommy Patterson down the street got sick, Dorothy pressed on, ignoring his protests, you paid for his medical treatments but told the family it was from an anonymous donor. Tommy's mother called me crying, wanting to thank whoever helped them. I had to bite my tongue not to tell her it was you. The studio audience was dead silent now. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a window into the private kindness of a man who'd spent decades hiding it. Mom, Johnny said quietly, why are you telling people this? Dorothy's voice softened. When she spoke again, everyone listening understood this conversation was about more than a proud mother. Because, Johnny, I'm 78 years old, and I went to the doctor last week. He told me some things that made me think about what needs to be said while there's still time to say it. The words hung in the air like lead. Johnny's face went pale. For the first time in his career, he seemed completely speechless. What kind of things, Mom? He asked, barely above a whisper. The kind of things that make a mother want to make sure her son knows how proud she is before it's too late to say it properly, Dorothy replied. And the kind of things that make her want the world to know what a good man her son is, not just what a funny man he is. Johnny Carson, who'd handled drunk guests, technical disasters, every conceivable crisis with perfect professionalism, finally broke. Tears rolled down his cheeks. His voice cracked when he tried to speak. Mom, are you trying to tell me you're sick? I'm trying to tell you that I love you, Johnny, Dorothy said, and that every night when I watch your show, I don't just see Johnny Carson, famous entertainer. I see the little boy who used to make puppet shows in our living room to cheer me up when I was having a bad day. The studio audience was crying now. Ed McMahon was wiping his eyes. Camera operators struggled to keep their equipment steady. In homes across America, 25 million people were witnessing one of the most genuine moments ever broadcast. I love you too, Mom, Johnny managed through his tears. And I'm coming to see you this weekend. We're going to sit in the kitchen and drink coffee and talk about everything. I'd like that very much, sweetheart, Dorothy replied. But right now, I think you have a show to finish. These nice people came to see you be funny, not watch you cry over your mother. If you're feeling what just happened, the weight of a mother's love, the reminder that time doesn't wait, you're exactly where we want you. That's what Johnny Carson Legacy Stories is about. The moments when Johnny stopped performing and became human. Subscribe now, because these truths matter more than any joke ever could. Somehow, Johnny pulled himself together enough to continue the show. He wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, addressed the audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice still thick with emotion, I want to apologize for that interruption, but as you just heard, my mother had something important to tell me, and apparently she decided 25 million people needed to hear it too. The audience erupted, not with laughter, but with respectful, emotional applause. I also want to say, Johnny continued, that if any of you have mothers who are still alive, call them tomorrow. Don't wait for them to call you on live television to tell them you love them. The episode became instant legend. NBC was flooded with calls from viewers expressing support for Johnny and hope for his mother. Letters poured in from people sharing stories about their own parents. But the most important call Johnny received was from Dorothy the next morning. Johnny, she said when he called, I hope you weren't upset about last night. I didn't mean to embarrass you on television." "Mom," Johnny replied, "that was the most important conversation I've ever had on The Tonight Show. I just wish we hadn't had to have it because you're sick." "Well," Dorothy said with characteristic practicality, "we all get sick eventually. The important thing is, I got to tell you what I needed to tell you while I could still say it clearly." Dorothy Carson lived 2 more years after that phone call. Johnny made good on his promise. He visited regularly, not just his mother, but Mrs. Henderson and all the neighbors Dorothy had mentioned. He continued the quiet kindness his mother had revealed to America that night. When Dorothy passed away in 1984, Johnny took 2 weeks off from The Tonight Show, the first unscheduled break in over a decade. When he returned, he dedicated his entire opening monologue to her, ending with a simple statement that brought viewers to tears. "She taught me that making people laugh is a gift, but making people feel loved is a responsibility." The red phone Dorothy had somehow connected to was never used as a prop again. Johnny had it disconnected and moved to his dressing room, where he kept it as a reminder of the night his mother reminded him, and America, what really mattered. Years later, when asked about his most memorable Tonight Show moment, Johnny always mentioned that phone call. "I spent 30 years trying to perfect my timing on that show," he'd say. "But the most perfect timing belonged to my mother, who somehow knew exactly when to call and remind me that being a good son was more important than being a good entertainer." The night Dorothy Carson called The Tonight Show became more than a memorable television moment. It became a national reminder about expressing love while there's still time. Johnny Carson had spent decades making people laugh, but that night his mother made them cry, and in doing so, she gave them something more valuable than entertainment. She gave them a reminder to tell the people they love how they feel before it's too late. Today, when people discuss the most genuine moments in television history, Dorothy Carson's phone call is always mentioned. It was the moment when the carefully constructed barrier between entertainer and audience completely disappeared, revealing the human being behind the celebrity smile. Johnny Carson spent his career giving America laughter. But that December night in 1982, his mother gave America something even more precious, a reminder that behind every public figure is a person with a family, with feelings, with the same need for love and connection we all share. The call lasted less than 10 minutes, but its impact lasted a lifetime. It proved that sometimes the most powerful television happens not when everything goes according to script, but when real life interrupts the performance and reminds us what really matters. Johnny Carson died in 2005, but what his mother did that December night still echoes. She taught America that love can't wait, that pride should be spoken, that the people we care about need to hear it, not later, not someday, but now. On December 15, 1982, Dorothy Carson picked up the phone and did something impossible. She called her son during his live television show. And in 7 unscripted minutes, she changed how 25 million people thought about their own mothers, their own families, their own unspoken love. If this story moved you, if Dorothy's courage to say what needed to be said resonates with you, subscribe to Johnny Carson Legacy Stories right now. Hit that like button, share this with someone you love and haven't told lately, and drop a comment. When was the last time you told your mother you loved her? Because Dorothy Carson proved something that night. The most important words are the ones we say before it's too late. Call your mother, call your father, call whoever matters. Don't wait for them to interrupt your life on live television. Do it now. Because as Johnny Carson learned that December night, tomorrow isn't promised. But love, spoken today, lasts forever.